You know that coffee shop you love? The one with the good Wi-Fi and that perfect latte? Well, it turns out it has a history that's both revolutionary and, well, deeply complicated. We're going to get into it because the story of the coffee house is about so much more than just caffeine. It's a story of debate, rebellion, and a dark secret that helped build an empire. So yeah, that's the big question, right? We're going to see how these brand new public spaces completely change the world. But we're also going to ask what, or maybe who, paid the hidden price for all of that progress. All right, so first up, what exactly made the coffee house such a game changer? To really get it, you've got to look at what came before. Before coffee took over, the main social spot in Europe was, you guessed it, the tavern. And taverns, yeah, they were pretty much what you're picturing. Fueled by booze, they were often seen as loud, chaotic, even immoral places. Coffee houses were a total 180. They served a drink that, sharpened your mind instead of dulling it. They were all about sobriety, which was seen as the perfect state for actually discussing big ideas. And just like that, you had this new, civilized space for people to gather and think. And nowhere did this idea explode quite like it did in Paris. I mean, this image just nails the vibe, right? You can see people reading the news, others are locked in some passionate debate. These weren't your quiet work-from-home cafes. No way. These were the electric, buzzing hearts of public discourse and, yeah, revolutionary ideas. And the sheer number of them is just staggering. By the time the French Revolution was about to kick off, Paris had over 800 of these places. They were absolutely everywhere, and they became the essential staging grounds for one of the biggest political upheavals in history. And this wasn't just idle chatter. These places were launchpads for real action. Picture this. July 12th, 1789. A young journalist, Camille Desmoulins, hears some bad political news, runs out of the Café du Foie, hops up on a table, and gives this incredible, fiery speech that gets the crowd going. Just 2 days later, bam, the storming of the Bastille, a revolution, quite literally sparked from a coffeehouse table. So what was the secret sauce here? What made these places so incredibly powerful? Well, it was the creation of something completely new, what we now call the public sphere. This old poem from 1674 tells you everything you need to know. Unlike fancy private clubs, coffeehouses didn't really care about your social status. For the price of a penny cup of coffee, a regular working guy could sit down next to a nobleman and debate him as an equal. The poem says it all. Take the next fit seat that he can find. Your title, your money, it just didn't matter once you walked through that door. So they got this amazing nickname, penny universities. They became the absolute heart of the city. This is where you got the latest news, the juiciest gossip. In fact, some of the first modern newspapers, like the Tatler and the Spectator, basically started as collections of coffeehouse conversations. Business deals were struck, political opinions were forged. It got so influential that the people inside these coffeehouses became known as the Fourth Estate, a new kind of power center totally outside of the government. But, and this is a huge but, this whole idyllic picture of a new, open, equal society, it wasn't the whole story, not even close. The answer to that, unfortunately, is a hard no. That beautiful vision of a public space for everyone had some pretty high walls built around it. And here it is, the first major catch. This revolutionary new world of debate, news, and opportunity was a boys' club. For men, and men only. Women were deliberately and completely shut out. And let me tell you, women at the time were not having it. They didn't just quietly accept this. They protested. I mean, listen to this fiery quote from a woman's petition back in 1663. They argued that coffee was making men abandon their families and duties, and you can really feel their anger at being excluded from this new world. So that's one huge glaring blind spot. But there's another, even darker secret lurking behind every single cup of coffee, and it has to do with where it all came from. The coffee, and just as important, the sugar people were putting in it, didn't just magically appear. They were the products of one of the most brutal economic systems ever devised, the triangular slave trade. It worked like this. Ships left England loaded with goods, sailed to Africa, and traded those goods for enslaved human beings. Those people were then forced across the Atlantic in the most horrific conditions imaginable, sold and forced to work on plantations growing coffee and sugar, which was then shipped back to Europe. The scale of this is, well, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. In just that one period on British ships alone, we're talking about an estimated 3.1 million African people, stolen from their homes, and forced into slavery, all to fuel this new commercial revolution. And this is where the contradiction becomes just gut-wrenching. You've got these men in London and Paris sipping coffee and debating ideals like liberty and reason, while the actual human beings who grew that coffee were being tortured, branded, beaten, and ripped away from their families. Their entire identities were systematically destroyed. So when we look back, how do we make sense of all this? The truth is, you have to hold both of these realities in your head at the same time. The coffeehouse was a place of incredible progress, yes, but also of profound, world-shattering injustice. This chart really lays it all bare, doesn't it? The ideal was this great social leveler, but the reality was a world that shut women out completely. The ideal was a hub for new businesses and commerce, but the reality was an economy literally built on the backs of enslaved people. It was a free school for the public, sure, but one that came with a terrible, unexamined moral cost. So the next time you're sitting in a coffee shop, it's worth taking a second to think about this complicated legacy. The coffeehouse gave us some of our most cherished ideas about public debate and free information, but it also forces us to ask a question that's just as relevant today as it was 300 years ago. What unseen price is being paid for the comforts we enjoy?